Hello everyone, this is Olga Odhiambo with GEM Accounting and Tax. Today we'd like to talk about the PPP, and more than that, we want to talk about the changes, the latest changes to the PPP, which is the Payment Protection Program that came as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. So the first change that I want to talk to you about is the extension of the covered period. Covered period simply means from the time you got the funds to the time you're supposed to pay back. As most of you may be aware, the initial covered period was 8 weeks. So meaning from the day you got the funds, you had 8 weeks to spend this money, and at the end of the 8 weeks, then you would then apply for the forgiveness of the loan. What Congress did was to extend the 8-week period to 24 weeks. So that gave the employers time to go back into the workforce and hire employees, and therefore increase their chances of having those loans forgiven. The second thing that is new in the updates to the CARES Act was an increase in the percentage of the non-payroll forgiveness expenses. What I mean by this, initially we were told that in order to qualify for 100% forgiveness of the PPP loan, you had to spend 75% of the money on payroll. What Congress did in the new changes, they said, let's reduce that 75 to 60%. So you have 24 weeks to spend this money. In addition to that, you are allowed to spend 60%, at least 60% of it on payroll. Then the other 40% can be spent on non-payroll expenses such as rent, interest on your mortgage, which you had to have in place before February 15th, 2020. Utilities such as electricity, water, sewer, telephone type of expenses. So now you can spend more money on non-payroll and still get that forgiven. The third factor that I'd like to talk about is the full-time equivalence factor. Pretty much, full-time equivalent is pretty much used to determine who among your workforce, who among your staff is a full-time employee versus a part-time. So the definition of full-time equivalent is if you have employees that work more than 30 hours a week, they are considered to have a full-time equivalent of 1. So if you're working 40 hours a week, that your full-time equivalent is 1. 50 hours a week, your full-time equivalent is 1. If you have part-time individuals, part-time staff members, their full-time equivalent then goes to 0.5. So for example, you have somebody who comes in and works 20 hours a week, their full-time equivalent factor then becomes 5. So originally, we were told that to get full forgiveness on your PPP loan, you had to maintain the same number, the same total of your full-time equivalent. So if you had 10 members of staff at the time of application, when you come back to request for forgiveness, you need to have the same factor of 10. So you needed to have the same number of employees at the point of forgiveness that you had when you initially applied for the PPP. This has since changed because we all know that because of this pandemic, a lot of employers and a lot of business owners have not been able to bring back employees at the same rate they did. So they're not really able to maintain the same number of staff they had from before. Some people offered jobs to these people who were laid off, and unfortunately some of these jobs were turned down, or your level of business activity is just not there to justify you having employees coming back to work for you. So the one thing I would like to emphasize is if you had any of these conditions where you try to hire, they are not able to come back, or they refuse to come back, or your business activity level is just cannot justify you bringing these guys back, you need to document this. With this law and with the PPP, I would emphasize that keeping good records is always so important. So like I said, with the new changes, if you're not able to maintain that same level of FTE factor or number or total, you do not get punished for that. So that's a really good change that Congress, saw fit to add to the loan forgiveness structure. The other change that we have with the updates to the law was an increase to the deferral period. So let me just explain this just a bit. So and I'm going to throw some numbers there just to make it more clear. For example, when you, assuming you at the point of applying for the loan, you requested for $70,000, and after doing your calculations, your FTE and so on and so forth, the 60-40%, you end up having a forgiveness amount of $60,000, right? You've taken into account all these factors and you end up with a $60,000 amount. This means that the difference between the original loan amount and the forgivable amount then becomes a loan, right? So with this loan, what do you do with this loan? So what Congress did was to increase the loan deferral period. What this means is that you have 10 months before you have to start paying back this $10,000 amount that you are not able to get forgiveness for. So this is going to be very important for those business owners that, you know, are paying attention to their cash flows and can also plan. So this is 10 months after you have applied for the forgiveness of the loan. The other thing you want to also keep in mind that this loan has very favorable terms, in my opinion. It's a 1% loan, 1% meaning interest rate, and it can spread over 5 years. Now it's up to you as a business owner and what your cash flow position is on whether or not you want to carry that kind of liability in your books for that period of time. But what Congress is doing here is to make sure that small business owners are spoken for and that they can still keep their doors open despite the pandemic. If you have any questions at all regarding the PPP loan forgiveness, please reach out to me. Again, this is Olga with GEM Accounting and Tax. Have a good day.